All right, everybody. Hello and welcome. We hope that you all are looking forward to today's session as much as we are. And as everyone kind of settles in as we get started here, we'd love to invite all of you, as many of you as possible, to join us on camera. It would be great to see more of the faces of the folks behind the names that we see on Zoom here with us today. So if you'd like, go ahead and click that raise hand icon that you see on your screen, and our team will give you permissions so that you can turn on your camera. So I see folks raising their hands. Give us just a moment and we'll give you access to that. As we get started here, I also encourage you to open up your chat box and say hello. You'll notice that folks are telling us which part of the world they're dialing in from today. So please join in on the fun. Tell us which part of the world you're dialing in from as well. I see that we have folks from Ecuador and Spain and Istanbul, Greece, the Philippines, Armenia, San Francisco, right next door to Stanford, from Paris, New Zealand, Oregon, Africa, Texas, Mexico, Argentina, Bulgaria, incredible, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, New Zealand. We have our very own version of the World Cup going on here. And so it's incredible to see all the different countries represented. Welcome, everybody. All right. And again, for the folks that just joined us, welcome. It's great to have you here. We'd love to see more of you on camera with us here today. So if you'd like to join us on camera, you'll see that raise hand icon on your screen. Go ahead and click that and our team will give you access to the camera so you can join us. And as you get started as well, please go ahead and open up your chat box. It's always great to see the global representation that we have within these webinars that then translates into the LEAD community as well. So we would love to hear where everyone is dialing in from. And as folks are introducing themselves, I'll go ahead and dive in. And I just want to start with a warm welcome to each of you. My name is Marina, and I'm joined here on this call by several members of the LEAD program team. And on behalf of our entire team at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, we're just so delighted to have you joining us today to get a taste of LEAD through this webinar on crisis management. Now, before we officially get started, I'd just like to take a few minutes to share a bit of context into the LEAD program and its relation to today's session as well. Now, Stanford LEAD has been the GSB's flagship online program for more than a decade now, and it delivers an experience that reflects just the very best of the school. This program combines Stanford's academic rigor with a highly supportive, connective, and flexible learning environment. And it takes full advantage of the online format, where it makes it possible for working professionals like many of you to learn, connect, and immediately apply new ideas while balancing the demands of work and life. Now, in the program, there's an 8-course requirement that you'll be expected to complete, which combines business, leadership, innovation, to help you lead through complexity, to navigate change, and make effective decisions, especially in today's world that's being transformed by AI, disruption, and constant change. And in the program, you'll complete 2 foundation courses, 1 leadership core course, and then you'll have the option to choose 5 electives that you can select from 15 options across a variety of topics, giving you a chance to really customize the program to meet your own goals. Now, today's webinar is focused on one of those elective course options called Crisis Management. Now, across all of our courses in LEAD, they're taught by the same senior tenured faculty who teach across our MBA program and our executive programs. And in LEAD, they teach a very unique experiential, experiential learning model, so that rather than simply consuming the content, you'll really master what you learn through hands-on assignments, where you'll have a chance to immediately apply your learning. So you see those results right away. And in most of your courses, this will ultimately build up toward a final project or a course capstone. Now, within your courses, you'll also work with course facilitators who serve as a blend between an executive coach and a teaching assistant. So they'll follow your progress through each course and provide you with personalized coaching and feedback to really help you stretch and get the most out of the experience. Now, in addition to the faculty and our wonderful course facilitators, the LEAD community, who are the peers that you'll be learning with and learning from, are definitely one of the program's greatest strengths as well. Now, while LEAD is delivered fully online, the learning experience is intentionally designed to be interactive, social, and deeply connective. So, and today, our global community includes more than 6,000 participants in over 110 countries. So, similar global diversity that we're seeing represented here in the chat, just in this room today, creating such a rich network of professionals with diverse backgrounds, industries, and perspectives. Now, one of the things that participants value most is the opportunity to learn alongside people that they would never encounter otherwise. So rather than being surrounded by colleagues who might think like they do or work in the same field, they're exposed to professionals that are tackling similar challenges, but in very different contexts. And those are the conversations that really broaden your perspectives, spark new ideas, and often that's actually what becomes one of the most lasting and valuable parts of the LEAD experience. Now, at the same time, flexibility is also central to LEAD's design. This program was built specifically for busy professionals, allowing you to pursue a rigorous Stanford education while realistically balancing a demanding professional and personal responsibilities. Now, the schedule for the program runs over a period of 1 year. It's part-time, fully online. And traditionally, participants report investing an average of about 5 to 10 hours per week to complete those 8 courses to earn the professional certificate. Although I'll note there are some options to scale that back, reduce your course load, and extend your enrollment over a longer period of time, if that works better for your schedule. Now, for many participants, LEAD becomes a meaningful inflection point in their careers. It helps them move beyond functional expertise into broader, more confident leadership. And we're delighted to have 2 ambassadors who have volunteered their time to share about their program experience and outcomes with us a bit later in today's session. So we'll look forward to that. And as you'll hear, the program delivers incredibly strong results, really helping individuals grow and transform both on a professional as well as on a personal level. So today we're looking forward to sharing just a small taste of that LEAD learning experience with all of you. And to do that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Stanford GSB Professor Steve Callander, who teaches the Crisis Management course in LEAD. Now, in the program, he's supported by a team of course facilitators, and we're thrilled to have Rasheen Ryan from that team to support your learning in this session as well. So Steve and Rasheen, thank you so much for being here. I'll turn it over to you and we can dive in.
Great, thanks, Marina. Let me share my screen. Oop, I need to do this. All right.
And Steve, do you want to go into presentation mode instead of the presenter mode?
Okay, very good. There we go. We're better.
Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Great to have you here today. My name is Steve Callander. I'm a professor at Stanford GSB, and I teach in the LEAD program, the Crisis Management course. I am originally from Australia. The faculty at the GSB is just like the participants in the LEAD program. We come from all over the world and come together to do research and teaching on business topics. I have been here at Stanford for 17 years, and I've been researching and teaching on the topic of crisis management for over 20 years now. As Marina mentioned, this is a course I teach in our full-time MBA program with our students here. I also taught it for many years in our executive programs that we conduct on campus. And I've been very excited to bring this material to the LEAD course. I love teaching in the LEAD course. I think it's a great audience, and I love to be able to connect with the people from all around the world who are eager to develop their skills and learn more about this important topic. All right, so let me give you a taste. My goal today is to give you a taste about what a crisis is, how we think about it in the crisis management course, and how we start to develop some frameworks and some tools to manage the crises that we face. So the first thing I should start with is just by pointing out that crises are happening all of the time. It's very easy and common for people to think that crises are these unusual, rare events that they don't need to worry about so much. But when you start paying attention to crises, as I do, sitting here at Stanford, teaching and researching on the topic, you start to realize they're happening every year, every month, every week, every day. You scan the newspaper, the website in your area, I'm sure you can find in there some crisis that a company, some organization is going through. So these crisis events are happening all the time, and they are significant events. They're not mere distractions. They're not something you have to cancel your weekend for, you deal with it, and it's done. These crisis events can have large, significant impacts on the value of an organization and on the people in that organization. All right, these are not just minor events. They may only happen to you occasionally, but when they do, they can have huge impacts on you at that time and also long into the future. So once we accept those two facts, we realize that crises are real events that management needs to think strategically about. And so one thing I tell my MBAs and I tell my executives and I tell the lead participants is that I predict with 100% probability that you will face a crisis in your career, maybe many crises. I may not be able to predict what that crisis is going to be. You may not be able to predict it either. In fact, you probably won't be able to predict what it is, and you won't be able to predict when it happens, but we can predict that one will happen. In modern organizations, in the modern world, there is enough going on, there's enough complexity that inevitably something happens that causes a crisis for you and your organization. So given one is going to happen, and given it's going to have a large impact on your organization, it's your responsibility as a manager, as a leader of your organization, to prepare yourself and to prepare your organization to manage that crisis when it happens. It's not enough when a crisis happens to just throw your hands up in the air and say, oops, who could have predicted that? As I said a moment ago, you may not have been able to predict what caused the crisis, but the fact that we can predict the crisis means it's your responsibility to get ready for that crisis and prepare yourself and your organization for it when it happens.
And Steve, my apologies for interrupting. This is Marina. It looks like we may have lost your video feed.
All right, let me get it back on then.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Perfect. Welcome back.
All right.
Let's continue.
You'll miss my wonderful facial expression during that opening. All right, very good. Thank you for that. All right, so crises are happening all the time. They have an impact on you. It's up to you to be prepared. To really drive home the point that these crises are happening all the time, I thought it would be great in this webinar to start with some examples of crises, to not only show you how often they're happening, but to show you the variety of crises that are occurring and the difficulty you have in predicting exactly what it's going to be. In fact, on the point that they happen all the time, sitting here researching and teaching about crisis, I keep a list of my favorite crisis of the month and my favorite crisis of the year. So I thought I'd go through my favorite crises of the last few years. All right, so let's start with 2025. What was my favorite crisis of 2025? Well, in fact, it was a funny one. It was a significant one, but it was a funny one. And I'm sure you all saw this one in the media all around the world. And that was the crisis that hit astronomer when the CEO and the head of people, the head of HR, were caught on the Jumbotron, on the Kiss Cam at a Coldplay concert. This was quite an embarrassment for the people involved, but it was a huge crisis for them and for the company. The CEO and their head of HR were fired as a result of these events. So Andy Byron is the now former CEO of Astronomer. And if you follow crisis management, that's a phrase you'll hear a lot. The now former CEO of a company. Because often in a crisis, the most effective strategy, and sometimes the only strategy, is to fire the CEO and start again. So these crises can not only affect your company, they can affect you too personally and your career. So this crisis was very costly for Astronomer. They lost their CEO, they lost their head of HR, two very valuable employees to the company. Right? There's a lot of human capital invested in them, and the company was embarrassed severely, and their reputation was tarnished. So this was quite funny, but it was also a huge crisis for the company. One interesting thing that happened in the days following that crisis, following this event, was the company decided, with a new CEO, to launch an advertising campaign while the crisis was still unfolding. And so here's an example of an ad they ran at the time. They hired as a temporary spokesperson, Gwyneth Paltrow, to speak about the company. Right? Why Gwyneth Paltrow? Well, it's kind of an in-joke. She is the former spouse of the Coldplay lead singer, generating a little more interest and attention. Right? But more seriously, what we want to think about is what were they trying to do here? And I think this is a smart play. They were trying to use this crisis to educate the public about what the company was. I don't know about you, but I'd never heard of Astronomer before this crisis happened. All I knew about it was the firing of the CEO and the head of HR. Through this advertising campaign, they were trying to use that attention to educate us about the company, the products they offered, and the more serious side of that company. This doesn't mean they were fortunate to have this crisis. It was still terribly costly to them. But what they were trying to do was manage their way, given that crisis, to get the best possible outcome they could. And I thought that was a smart move. So that was my favorite crisis of 2025. My favorite crisis of 2024 were our good friends at Boeing, who make common appearances on my list of favorite crises. In 2024 was when this door plug fell off mid-flight of an Alaskan Airlines flight whilst over Washington State. And if you're an aircraft manufacturer like Boeing, this is not the kind of image you want blasted across the media all around the world. Right? You're not supposed to be a passenger on a plane looking at a gaping hole in the fuselage like that. But nonetheless, that's what we saw. And that's destroying confidence in Boeing as a manufacturer of a plane. And many of us fly on Boeing planes. And so this is really hurting Boeing's reputation. To make matters worse, there was another round of coverage where the police and the authorities found the door plug itself sitting in somebody's front yard in the suburbs. So this exploded into a giant crisis for Boeing. And here's a story about the CEO at the time, Dave Calhoun, managing this crisis. And what I want to emphasize in this headline and the fact that he admitted and apologized for what had happened. He acknowledged that Boeing had made a mistake. You might say that's the right thing to do, but what we want to read in that headline is that this is a strategic choice. In a crisis, you'll always have the question of, should we apologize? Should we not apologize? This is Dave Calhoun making the strategic choice to apologize on Boeing's behalf. Unfortunately for Dave Calhoun, it didn't work out so well. He is now the former CEO of Boeing. There's that phrase again. And he got fired as a result of this crisis. So again, a huge impact on the manager, the executive involved, but also on the company itself. And if you look at Boeing's stock price through this time, tens of billions of dollars in valuation was wiped off the company. So again, these are not just mere distractions. It wasn't a weekend of headlines. This was super costly on the people involved and on the company. Of course, the remarkable thing about this example is Dave Calhoun only got the job because his predecessor, I should say, in the CEO position, Dennis Muilenburg, was fired as a result of the 737 MAX crashes that had happened a few years earlier. So now Dennis Muilenburg is the former CEO of Boeing. There's quite a club of former CEOs of Boeing. That was my favorite crisis of 2024. You might say, well, astronomer, that was their own silly fault for doing what they did. And in this case, Boeing made a flawed plane. So they should have had a crisis. But crises can also happen when you really haven't done anything wrong, when no one got hurt, no one gets killed. But nonetheless, a crisis can still happen to you. And that was the case in my favorite crisis of 2023. And that was the crisis faced by Bud Light and the boycott of their brand that exploded in the middle of the year. Right, so what happened? Why did Bud Light suffer this boycott? Well, Bud Light, like many brands, is always trying to target the young generation and connect with the young generation. Many of you out there have probably been involved in these sorts of efforts, trying to get your company to connect with the next generation of customers. Bud Light was no exception. So what they decided to do, as everyone does when you want to connect with the young'uns, is you get online. You hire a social media influencer, try to get something viral going online where all the young people are and try to get them interested in your brand. Well, Bud Light did the same thing. To lead their campaign, they partnered with a social media influencer who just happened to be transgender. Reasonable choice. Unfortunately for Bud Light, this was right at the height of the moment when transgender issues were the center of the cultural political wars here in the United States. This was a very active political fight. Bud Light, I would guess, thought they were being edgy and to connect with the younger generation. But what they did do is they induced the ire of these conservative groups who chose Bud Light to punish, to try to further their political goals. And so these groups deliberately created a crisis for Bud Light by boycotting their brand and creating an intense crisis for Bud Light to manage. There are hundreds of boycotts launched every year in the United States and around the world. Most of them go nowhere, but some of them get traction. And in this case, the boycott got a lot of traction. Bud Light, which had been the leading beer brand in America for decades, lost that position in a matter of weeks, dropping behind Modelo and into 2024 and later into third place behind Michelob Ultra. Right, so Bud Light, through their own actions, but nothing wrong in the sense that no one was hurt, no one was injured, there was no lying, no misrepresentation, but nonetheless brought upon themselves this giant crisis from these conservative groups. So they're my three favorite crises of recent years. There's also some just classic crises that have happened around the world. The biggest one in the United States since I've been doing this was the one that happened down in the Gulf Coast with BP and the explosion of their oil rig. And there in the photo in the upper right, we have the now former CEO of BP, Tony Hayward, trying to manage this crisis himself. He's down there in the Gulf. He's got his overalls on. He's got his hard hat on. He's trying to actively manage this crisis to the media, to politicians, and in the public domain. As I mentioned, unfortunately for him, he didn't do a great job and he was fired as a result of this crisis. Before he was fired, he had to testify in Congress. And in this photo in the lower right, you can see how intense this experience can be. Media gathered round, hundreds of cameras intensely focused on him. So these crises are not just big, they not just last a long time, but they can be very intense experiences for the executives involved in the crisis. I'll give you one final example. And to get outside the United States, obviously these crises are not just limited to the US, they're happening in every country all around the world. And one of the most remarkable crises that's happened in my time, since I've been researching and studying this topic, was one that happened in China with Sanlu. They were the producer of, amongst other products, baby formula. And so what happened was their supply chain became contaminated. And as a result, the babies consuming this baby formula, many of them got sick and about a dozen babies died as a result of this contamination. Right, so this was a tragedy. This was even a crime. Someone had done something wrong that allowed babies to get hurt and even killed. This led to a huge crisis for Sunlu, as it probably should. It also just led to outrage and protests all across China and all across the region. Many of you out there may be parents yourself, and you remember those days when your child is young, you got a young baby, you need to give them sustenance. And if baby formula is your only option, right, you want to make sure that that product is safe. You don't want to be giving your baby something that's contaminated. And unless you have a chemistry lab in your back room, you're not going to be able to verify whether the product you're using is safe or not. So sales of Sanlu's product went to zero. Sales in the whole product space went to zero. Protest all around the region. I'm originally from Australia. I know it became quite a business for a while where people would go around the shelves, buy up all of the baby formula and ship it off to China at a great markup. Even in China, protests like this and outcomes like this lead the government to get involved. So the Chinese government got involved. They prosecuted Sanlu. Sanlu, the company, was driven into bankruptcy. So this isn't just a distraction. It isn't even a drop in the stock price. This is a crisis that's wiping out the entire company. In fact, the government prosecuted the executives for a crime, and here's some of them depicted in the Chinese court, and half a dozen of them went to jail as a result of this crisis, and 2 were found guilty and executed as a result of this. Right, so that's how serious these crises can be. One interesting note on this crisis that is important for how we deal with crisis in the lead course is what happened to the industry after this crisis happened. The industry itself started to reorganize because of this event. Up until this point, the industry had not been vertically integrated. It was very fragmented. After this crisis, the companies who were putting their brand name and their company's name on the shelf for consumers to buy realized how important it was to ensure the integrity of their supply chain. If you're the company that's on the shelf and you're the company that's going to end up in a court, you can't entrust that outcome to some other company down your supply chain to make sure they're not going to cut corners and they're going to ensure the safety of your product. So the industry started to vertically integrate. If you're at risk of a crisis, that may change the whole strategic logic of the scope of your business and the structure of the industry. And that's how we think about crises in the lead course. We focus on crises as a unit to understand what a crisis is, how they evolve, and what strategies are available. And then we put it within the broader strategic context for you to understand, how do I think of crises as part of my broader corporate strategy? All right. So I could go on for hours with examples. I'm sure all of you have lots of examples from your own experiences, from your own region, from your industries. Right? It just drives home the point of how frequently these crises are happening, how important they are, and how fundamental it is for managers to take responsibility for these crises and prepare themselves and their organization to manage it. As we just saw in those examples, these crises can come in many forms. They can be things you caused through your own actions, or they can be an accident that happens that you can or cannot anticipate would happen. It can be something that happens around you in your community, in your country, in your industry, and you just get sucked into that crisis, even though you did nothing, and the origin of it may have had nothing to do with you. The third category for crisis is maybe the hardest to manage, and that's where a crisis is generated deliberately against you. And this is what we just saw with Bud Light and the conservative activists. In the lead course, we spend quite a bit of time talking about the strategy of activists and how they use crisis deliberately as a tool to further their own ends. And that's an important category of crisis that a manager needs to anticipate and prepare for. Another thing we can see in these examples is that crises draw in many stakeholders, and that's a big part of what makes them really hard to manage. Usually a manager's worried about what's happening in their firm. Are there teams and your direct reports doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are you getting your message up to your CEO, to the board, and your boss? Or you're worried about what's happening within your market. What are your competitors doing? What's the nature of competition in your industry? in a crisis, the scope that we need to consider expands enormously. It's not just within our firm or within our market, it's within society more broadly. So the stakeholders are not just your competitors, not just your customers and suppliers, but it becomes the media, the general public, activists, regulators, politicians, basically anyone in society may either be in your crisis or decide to get drawn in. And that's, as I said, a reason for why these crises are so hard. So in the course, we spend quite a bit of time understanding the full array of stakeholders. What are their goals? What are their motivations? What strategies are available to them so that as a manager of a firm, we can begin to anticipate and feed that knowledge into our own strategy. A final point about these crises is the level and the range that they can manifest. So the examples I gave you were all large companies known all around their region, if not all around the world, and the crises were at the existential level and the domain of the CEO. I chose those examples so that they would resonate with the most here on this call today. But many, many crises are happening out of the view of the sort of the broader public. They're smaller scale at different parts of the company, in different communities within a country or in a region. And so that's one big reason why crisis management is not just something for the CEO to worry about. It's something for all managers to worry about. At whatever level you're operating at, a crisis can happen. And if you're the senior leader in that scope, in that team, it's going to be your responsibility to anticipate and manage that. And even for bigger crises that happen at a corporate level, a company-wide level, they often originate by decisions made within subunits. For example, Bud Light, that crisis originated in the marketing team. They thought, well, we'll go viral. We'll get a social media influencer to lead the campaign. And this person they chose was very edgy. This will be great. They didn't anticipate that this could cause a crisis for the entire company. So another thing we take from the course, and I think is really relevant to the participants, is that these ideas, these frameworks we give, happen at all different scales. It's not just giant media events that affect the CEO, but they're of all scales, not only of companies, but even within companies. And so the material and the tools are very relevant all across the board. Very good. So let me give you some more notes about some more comments about the crisis. All right, so I've given you these examples. These crises are big, they're happening all of the time, and they're significant for organizations. You might be tempted to think, okay, all of those facts can be true, but why do I need to take a course on crisis management? Isn't it pretty easy to manage a crisis? If that's what you're thinking, I got some news for you. They're not easy. Crisis management is hard. If we think about Dennis Muhlenberg, the now former CEO of Boeing, or the former CEO of BP, or any of these famous former CEOs who lost their jobs in a crisis, right? These are smart, talented people who worked hard and rose up the ranks of giant companies and attained the position of CEO. Right? And so you want to ask yourself, why do all these smart, talented people keep screwing up? If crisis management is easy, why are these people losing their jobs? The answer is that crisis management is hard. There's lots of advice out there about you should just be transparent, or you should just get out ahead of the issue, or so on. Right? But these sorts of rules of thumb, these pithy little pieces of advice, all right, don't work as a strategic logic. Right? Crisis management is hard, and it's a different kind of problem. And so that's why we see smart, talented, successful people come undone in a crisis. What happens is these smart, successful people are excellent at managing normal business operations. And then when these different kinds of events happen, these crises, they're left flailing because they don't know what to do. Crisis management is hard. Smart people just can't figure it out on the fly. What you need to do is step back, think about crisis at a foundational level, and start building up a holistic view a framework and a set of tools to manage a crisis when one happens to you. And that's what we try to do in the course. All right, so what this implies is that crisis management is not just normal operations sped up. Right? You may be a smart manager and your organization may be very efficient and well run, but a crisis is a different kind of event. So it's not a matter of just canceling your weekend plans and managing the crisis. These are different kinds of events that require a different set of tools. And in fact, this is the number one mistake I see companies make in crisis situations. They think we're smart people, we'll be able to manage the crisis. And the final thing I'll say here is that crisis management is your responsibility. These are management issues that need to be handled by the manager. In a crisis, PR people, lawyers, other engineers, and so on bring valuable skills to the problem of crisis management. But you cannot delegate crisis management to these functions. If you're going to make a decision to ground the Boeing 737 MAX, or to shut down a plant, or recall a product, or fire the CEO, these are not decisions that you can delegate to HR, the lawyers, the engineers, or anyone. These are company-wide or unit-wide decisions, and so it's the responsibility of managers, the people who see the whole structure of the problem, to handle these crises. In a crisis, you are not a passive participant. It's a strategic problem, and you're an actor in it, and we want to think about that strategically. To finish today, I thought to sort of get you active, I'd finish with an example. In the crisis course, as in all of the lead courses, we try to make our learning very active. We try to give you these frameworks and give you these tools and throw you in to try to apply those tools, to understand how they work and to see their power and see what they cannot do. That's particularly the case in crisis management, where it's really important to practice the skills of crisis, because when you face one, you won't have time to go back to the textbook and read the book and figure out what to do. You need to have these skills practiced and ready to go. So to do that, let's consider the example of Toyota, who in around 2011 faced a giant crisis around allegations of sudden acceleration. So these were the claims by many Toyota owners that the cars were just accelerating on their own. People wouldn't hit the accelerator, but the car would just accelerate. Or if you were driving, it would jump off much faster. And there were reports of loads of crashes and accidents of people suffering from sudden acceleration. You might think this is crazy, but it turned into a giant crisis for Toyota. Here's an example of them on the cover of Time magazine. Turned out Toyota did an investigation. There were some issues with the floor mats that they fixed, but they strongly believed that there was no sudden acceleration. Nonetheless, the crisis kept getting worse and worse. They started to get made fun of in the internet. TV started to get into them, both of these using Toyota's own slogan, their own marketing against them. And it had a giant impact on the value of the organization. We can see that in their stock price dropping about 20%, tens of billions of dollars when this happened. And so it came to a question: what should Toyota do? If you have a few moments, you might want to think about that answer, and you can drop your responses into the chat box. This crisis in the past, but as I've been promising, you will face a crisis in the future, and so you'll be put on the hot seat as to what to do in this situation. What did Toyota do? Well, Toyota decided to apologize. Here they are choosing to apologize, recall millions of cars to fix the problem. And here's a photo of the senior Toyota executives testifying in front of the US Congress. This solved their problem externally at great cost, mind you, but it also caused a parallel crisis inside the company. The Toyota engineers were outraged. They'd made a great car, they thought, and now they had their senior executives apologizing. So managing the crisis internally was a big part of the crisis response. Sometimes the outcomes in a crisis are all bad. Right? That's part of the reality of crisis and the part of managing it strategically. You've got to accept it's happened to you, and the set of possible outcomes may all be bad, and you're trying to manage to the top of that range. The Toyota executives did this, up to the point of admitting to a problem that they didn't even believe was real, but ultimately they decided this was the best strategy for them. So let me conclude there by just pointing out again that crises are real, and when they hit, your company is at risk. That's your responsibility to manage that risk, and that management is a strategic problem. So what we do in this course is we give you the framework to understand crisis strategically, and we give you the tools to manage that problem, because as I promised at the start, you will face a crisis in the future, and in the future, these tools will become very valuable to you. So let me stop there. I hope that was a taste of crisis management for you, to give you an indication of the kind of events we deal with and how we approach them in the course. I love teaching in the lead course. I think it's wonderful to take this content and these ideas that I spend time with our MBAs and senior executives here on campus and spread them all around the world. Here at Stanford, we value academic rigor and community. It works great on campus, and in the lead program, we've figured out a way, there's some magic involved in how it works, but we've figured out a way to build this community worldwide amongst a lot of people who otherwise couldn't come to campus while maintaining that level of academic rigor. And so I love meeting people from all over the world, from different walks of life and different industries throughout the lead course. In fact, I met the course facilitator for this course, Roisin Ryan, online. We hadn't met before Lead started, and she joined the course. Roisin is an alum of Stanford in our management program. Coincidentally, though, even though we had not met and we met online as part of the Lead course, Roisin also happens to be from Australia. So with that, thanks for coming. I'll come back in a few moments, but I'll hand it over to Roisin now.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve. And it's so great to see so many faces from all around the world of people who are deeply invested in their learning and development. As Steve mentioned, my name is Roisin Ryan. I am a course facilitator on the LEAD program and specifically for crisis management. And as he mentioned, I'm also an alum of the GSB. I graduated about 15 years ago. I can't believe it's been 15 years, but here we are. And like a lot of alum at Stanford, we have stayed deeply connected to the community because we love the campus and the university so much. And so when there was an opportunity to join the LEAD program as a course facilitator, I absolutely jumped at it. So I actually started the LEAD program at its inception, the first year that it started, and then came back about 6 or 7 years ago to be a course facilitator for crisis management. And what you'll find is that the course facilitators actually have really long tenure in this program, and that's because we truly believe it is one of the best experiences that you will get online for learning, and we are invested in it. So we keep coming back year after year because we love it so much and really enjoy being part of this amazing community. And the course facilitators were from all around the world, and we understand what it's like to be a practitioner in this learning environment. And again, are really deeply committed to it. We believe that the course facilitators are a really strong differentiator of this course. So not only do you get the online learning and the modules, you have access to world-class professors like Steve Callander, and you're able to interact with them through the courses, but then you also have access to our course facilitators that really help personalize the experience. And we're really here to support you through this learning journey. So you're probably asking, what do we actually do as a course facilitator? And so as Marina mentioned, and you see in that Venn diagram on the right-hand side, we're a little bit of a hybrid of a teaching assistant and an executive coach. So from the teaching assistant side, we're deeply familiar with the content and the course guidelines. As I mentioned, we tend to have really long tenure here. So we understand the materials incredibly well, but we also understand what is required to pass the course. What are some of the requirements of the course? We all know that you're exceptionally busy professionals. You have work commitments, you have family commitments, a lot going on in your lives. So we'll work with you to make sure that you meet those requirements. If that means that you need some flexibility with the assignments, or if you just need some tips, we're always available here to support you and to make sure that you can pass the course based on what's going on in your life. We also assess your work. So each of the courses in LEAD is slightly different. So for some assignments, you might get individual feedback. If you're working on team assignments, you'll get feedback as a team. And then sometimes we provide a summary group guidance so that we can really talk about the themes that we've seen in that module or so on, and then you'll get it as a group. On the executive coaching side, we are actually, a lot of us are executive coaches. I am actually an executive coach, and a lot of the folks, particularly in the leadership courses, the course facilitators are executive coaches as well, but we're also practitioners. I have 25 years of professional working experience. I'm actually a corporate strategist in training, but have spent considerable amount of time building and protecting brand equity and reputation and all the storytelling around that. So I've had that experience as a practitioner and can then apply it in the practical circumstances of being a practitioner in a company, in an organization, and in industry. So I'm really familiar with the application of the content that you learn in crisis and how you'd apply that in your everyday. And you'll find that the course facilitators, no matter what program you do, really have familiarity with the application at a practitioner level. So what we also do is provide very personalized feedback. We are capped in terms of how many participants we support. So we're not supporting hundreds. We actually have a small group that we work with very closely during those 8 weeks. And the first thing that I do is actually look at your profile. I really try to understand the industry that you're in. Are you regulated, not regulated? The company you work at, what is your role within the company, where you are based in the globe, because we know that there's also cultural differences. So my first thing is to just really get to understand and know you. And then as I work with you over those 8 weeks, it's surprising how well we get to know each other. And I'm reading your assignments every week. I'm reading about your experiences. And so all my feedback is really personalized to you. I get to know you and understand how you would apply that in your context. And that's, again, a really big differentiator of the program. This isn't just a generic online learning experience. We provide a very personalized experience for you. In many courses, there's also one-on-one coaching. And particularly a lot of those leadership courses, you'll actually get that one-on-one from the coaches themselves. And then we also have group discussions and office hours. Actually, earlier this week, I caught up with a dozen of the participants in crisis management course. We had an amazing discussion. And then it was also any questions that you have about how to apply the materials to your assignments. I help you prep for your assignments. And we just have these wonderful, great, very rich discussions. And honestly, it's part of my favorite part of the course is connecting with you individually and having that time with you. So the aim of the course facilitator is really to support the community engagement, making sure that you're interacting with your peers, also allowed to interact with me and the team that support the program, and integrate the learning, what you learn from those modules and how you actually apply that to your everyday work, so that we make sure that you understand how it applies and how you can actually, for the specific circumstances that you're facing. And then we're here to support and constructively challenge you. I'll always do that. I'll always try to push your thinking and get you to sort of think outside of the box and how you can apply these in your everyday. So that's a little bit about the course facilitator role and how we support you. And again, a strong differentiator in this program to really personalize it to you. Now, as we think about the specific programs, I'm going to provide a little bit of an overview of a week in the life of a participant in crisis management. So we have here an outline of what the modules within crisis management looks like. You'll see the two, it is very small, I know, but I'll talk to it. So you'll see the two red boxes at either end of this. So at the very beginning, that's the introduction, and then at the end. So at the introduction, this is before the modules are opened and before you start, but this is a perfect time for you to have a look at the course. Every course is different. In crisis management, we have one module per week, but that's not the case in every course. For some courses, it might be 2 weeks for a module, whatever the case case may be. So this introductory period that we open up the course, it really allows you to familiarize yourself with the content when your assignments are due, so that you can really then plan forward how you manage your time, because again, you've all got commitments and we really want to make sure that you're set up for success. It's also an opportunity for you to meet the other participants in the course. Again, we're highly interactive. We really want you to engage with everyone and myself. I'll introduce myself and reach out to you personally. And then also it's a time that if you have teams, some courses have teamwork, not all do. We do in this course, because we really want to provide you that experience of what it would be like in crisis. And usually you are in a team when you approach a crisis management response. So you will also be assigned to teams. Sometimes it's self-formed, but in our course, we actually assign you, and we're very thoughtful in how we assign you, because we know that we want to make this as easy for you as possible. So we try to assign based on time zones so that you can actually connect as much as you can. And then the way that this course is really organized is that weeks 1 to 4 are really the building blocks, or the foundation building blocks of how to create a crisis management response. Now, you don't have to be a CEO to really benefit from how to manage a crisis response, because at the end of the day, we are managing reputation. So it could be the reputation of the company, but it also could be the reputation of your team or your own individual reputation. This is a reputation management course. And so what we provide in modules 1 to 4 are the building blocks of how to manage reputation, whether it's how you make sense of the facts of that's happened around this crisis, and how you describe and you storytell around that, how you think about any potential media response, how you can think about intentional crisis, where someone has actually necessarily used those circumstances or that spotlight in the crisis to really create a narrative for their own means, and so how you respond to that. So weeks 1 to 4 is really the crisis management playbook, and then we bring this all together and we integrate it in module 5 in a crisis simulation. I'm going to talk about this in more detail a little bit later. It is actually I think one of the funnest parts of this course, because it's an experiential learning moment. And again, this is really what differentiates LEAD. You're not just consuming passive content. We really challenge you, and we give you the experiences that you can take all that learning and then really apply it in real time. So I'll talk about that in a moment in a little bit more detail. But then we switch gears a bit in the latter part of the course. So as we sort of build that crisis management playbook, we then provide an experience so that you can integrate it. In modules 6 to 8, we switch and we talk a little bit more about how you can mobilize around a crisis internally. And then at the end, we also talk about the reflections from a leadership perspective. So how you want to show up in a crisis as a leader individually. So we talk about that in it as well. But I'm going to stop just to provide you a week in the life of a leader who's going through crisis management. And I want to just stop on module 5, because as I mentioned, this is where we integrate the learnings that you have around a crisis management playbook. And this is really to give you a feel of how the learning is so different in this online program, because it's not just about listening to videos and reading. We really actually put you in the cold face of a crisis. So what happens is that as the module 5 opens up, we really give you strong instructions to get organized early, meet with your team. You've already worked with them before. You've already had some live mock simulations here. So you're already getting to know your team really well. And then you set some time to meet up, and then we also prepare you for this simulation. You know what's happening. We have a lot of materials and some videos to sort of how you prepare for it. We really strongly encourage you, and all the frameworks and the tools that you've learned in modules 1 to 4, have them in front of you. I know immediately the teams that have prepared and the ones that have not, because the ones that have not prepared tend to crumble in that moment. And because your job through this crisis is to come up with a crisis strategy document that I review at the end, and I know immediately immediately who is prepared and who is not. So we try to do as much as we can in the lead up to prepare you. And then what happens when you meet with your team, you will enter a 70-minute crisis simulation. And what that looks like is all online. You'll pop in, you'll have a clock counting down, and the crisis unfolds right in front of you. So you'll have some video modules. You actually have Steve Callander there telling you a little bit about the background of the crisis, but the crisis actually is evolving in those 70 minutes. So it's incredibly dynamic. And then you and your team have to create a crisis document and how you would respond to that crisis in that 70 minutes, and then you submit it before you leave that crisis simulation. So a lot of pressure, you're integrating all the learnings, and then in real time, you are responding to that crisis. And again, you don't have to be a CEO to take those learnings. This is a reputation management course that you can then apply into your everyday. Then later on in the week, we have a live session where the entire course comes together with the professor, and then we go through that case. And when I say we, the professor dissects it and really provides that learning for you. And then we also have a mock town hall where that one of the teams presents and pretends to be that team who is responding to that crisis, and everyone else is participant in the town hall. And we have quite a few of them throughout the course. So again, it's a very experiential course. It's not passive learning. We're there to challenge you and make sure that you really get the most of this, and that you know how you can apply it in your everyday roles. It's really a practical application of the learnings. So I hope this provides you a little bit of an overview of what the course facilitator role does, how we work with you, but then also how this experience is very much an experiential way of learning, and gives you a little bit of a feel for what to expect in the lead program. But again, it's so good to see all of you here, and I hope you really are excited about this experience, and hope to see many of you in the lead program itself. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Roisin. Well, you've heard from me, you've heard from Roisin about her side of the course. You've got an understanding of how this works, how, even though it's all online, we interact quite a bit with the participants through the live sessions, the message boards, the Zoom-in sessions, and the assignments with the course facilitator. We thought it would be natural for you now to hear from some of the people who have taken the course, and where I'm excited to have two of the past participants here to tell you about their experience in crisis management. So let me first pass it over to Tom. Tom, could you want to tell us about your experience taking crisis management?
Hi, everyone, and thanks for being here. I want to echo that from the professor. Thanks very much for being here. This is the best investment you could ever do for your career, your job, your company, whatever you want to call it. But this is it. And I want to echo everything that was said. This was, for me, a phenomenal experience. Now, in my real life job, I'm a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. I lobby Congress. I work with federal agencies, and I work with the periodic occupants of whoever the administration is at the White House. And again, as you can say with my job description, I deal with crisis every day. It's kind of funny. My job is managing political risk. I manage political risk of a whole wide range of subjects on any given moment, and I have to be a subject matter expert on hundreds of topics on a regular basis as they come up, as crises do arise, and they arise all the time. They're part of a regular rotation of things that happen here in Washington. But drilling down, though, this course, though, was so unique, and it's taught in such a way that everyone I know, everyone in my cohort that I spoke with about this class, everyone found profound value. My team, and there was a moment there earlier where Roisin was talking, and I was talking about how, if you think about this, your teammates are your core. And I had teammates. Again, I'm based in Washington. One of my teammates was based in the Vancouver area of British Columbia. Another teammate was based in Chile. Another teammate was based in Brazil. and another teammate was based in northern India. So we had a global perspective of issues and people who were able to bring different perspectives all coming at this together. Um, One of the things we did in our exercise, when we did the crisis management exercise in the crisis room, we all had different roles and responsibilities. I chose the role of the media manager, managing the media relations going on. My colleague in British Columbia, she was our CEO, and the other folks had various different roles of corporate executives within the crisis management exercise. And I found it to be one of the most exhilarating experiences I've ever had. I'd like to have a training class like that every month. That's how good this was. So it was just, it blows you away. And at the same time, when it was all said and done, as I've already told Dr. Callander on another occasion, that this was my absolute top best class I took at Stanford. I can't give it a higher rating than 5 stars. It's just 6 stars. Take your pick. But it's the real world learning experience that we got from these classes. When Roisin put the module up there of the different modules that were taught and everything, I was looking for my favorite module that was a corporate problem facing executives of a food company in South America dealing with terrorism. And it was a fascinating experience learning how corporate executives were making life and death choice decisions, not just on their profit line, but whether at the life and safety of their employees. It was just, again, you're dealing with different problems in this crisis management class. And again, it was extremely beneficial to my career. Uh, and that's what we're actually trying to, when we think about this, it's not just that again, this is a Stanford class, right? But now somebody who a friend of mine is at Harvard, he was taking a similar course in crisis management there. And he calls me up and said, "Hey, did you take this thing at Stanford?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Did you discuss this particular problem?" And one of the same problems, the case studies that Dr. Callander presented in his curriculum, was also taken as a case study that was done at Harvard. And we were comparing notes on what the outcomes were. And I explained to him how in my final paper, I said, "Well, this is what my decisions were." And he says to me, "Are you crazy? You can't do that." I said, "Yeah, you can." So it was a dynamic learning experience for me and one that I highly recommend for you to think about enrolling in. I'll turn over to Rumi.
All right, great. Thanks, Tom. I always love the hearty endorsement from someone so knowledgeable on the topic. Yes, so we'd also love to hear from Rumi. You want to tell us about your experience in the crisis course?
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Professor Callander. It's such an honor and an absolute pleasure to be here. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody who's joining us today. My name is Rumi Banerjee Dua. I am the Global Safety and Recall Management lead here at Roche Diagnostics. I'm based in the Bay Area in California. In my core, I am a patient safety advocate, although I work for a manufacturer, a medical device manufacturer, Roche. And in my role, I lead the post-market safety, the quality and compliance. I do the global recalls for all our diagnostic division devices. For example, all the blood diagnostics, glucose monitoring devices, cancer diagnosis devices. So I work with a lot of regulators like the FDA, a lot of other regulators around the world. I work with healthcare professionals. And as you can anticipate, since I work with medical devices, a crisis in my world means not only a business risk or a business crisis, but it means diagnostic crisis, clinical outcomes, and somebody's life at the end of the day. So when I saw this course of crisis management in Stanford Lead, which I completed last year in 2025. And I'm now continuing my journey because Stanford Lead, this course is so amazing that I just don't want to leave it. I want to continue my journey and expand my horizon with the course. So I saw this course of crisis management, and I was like, I deal with crisis. I've dealt with crisis in my job profiles. In the past 18 years in healthcare, and I think this would be perfect for me. And boy, I mean, it's definitely been a life-changing experience. The course is very fascinating, and I think what I love the most were the simulations, like Tom mentioned. Professor Callander just divides you into groups and throws you to kind of discuss some simulations, which are wonderful crisis experiences basically, and you have to kind of navigate through those. But the best part about the course is how it gives you these tools of navigating through these crises. One thing that really I kind of hold on to, and I still kind of practice it every day since I work in recall management and I do recall of medical devices, was something called the pre-mortem. So like Professor mentioned when he was sharing the wonderful slides with us, that you would face a crisis, and how prepared are you during a crisis. So he gave us a tool called the pre-mortem. So you anticipate something that could happen and you do a pre-mortem of the situation, and then you kind of move forward. And I still use it almost, I would say, every time that I'm kind of managing a recall. And one more thing that really stood out was, who are the persons when you're building your crisis management team, because you want to be prepared, who are the people who are needed? Should it be like a large group? Should it be a small group? Who do you want on your side? And the third thing that I really took from the course was, a crisis can definitely, it's an event, absolutely, but it could be a gain for somebody else, or probably it could be an opportunity. You make it an opportunity for yourself, or you make it an opportunity for somebody else. Like in some of the examples that you saw in the slides, a big crisis can be taken as an opportunity for some of your competitors. And obviously, you do not want that. So, how you can change a crisis into an opportunity for yourself, I think it goes a long way to be prepared, to have a team. And then the course gives you those tools. It gives you a playbook basically to navigate through those difficult situations when you come across one. And I would definitely suggest for all of you to join this course. It will not only help you professionally, but it will definitely help you personally. You go through a lot of crises, not only in your professional life, but they might be small crises, but they might be crises in your personal life. And it would definitely help you to use those tools in whatever crisis situation you are. So you cannot avoid a crisis, but you could get the tools to navigate through one. And I'm really thankful that I joined the course. And I'll hand it back to Professor Callander. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rumi. Great to hear. Great to hear. I'm helping in your personal life as well as your professional life. That's a bonus. Great. I always love teaching in the lead course, and I particularly love one thing, what Rumi was talking about, how she had practical tools from the course that she could apply to the problem she faced at work. In my course and throughout Lead, we really put an emphasis on not just the theory, but giving you the tools and the knowledge how to use those tools in your work. And so whatever industry you're in, whatever seniority level you're in, wherever you are in the world, you can take these tools, you can apply them to your work, and it can help you be more successful managers. And that at its heart is why I love teaching in the Lead program. We can take this knowledge, these skills, these frameworks, and speak to a much broader audience, a set of managers struggling with these challenges all around the world. And the Lead course provides us with that opportunity. So you've heard a lot about my Lead course, about crisis management. I'm going to hand it back to Marinay now to lead a panel discussion of ambassadors in the Lead program and their experience taking all of these courses and working their way through the Lead program. So thanks for listening in on crisis management today, and let me hand it back to Marinay. Thank you.
Well, Thank you so much, Professor Callander and Rasheen, also for such an interesting discussion. And Rumi and Tom, we really appreciate your insights as well. To everybody that joined, we hope that this gave you just a small taste of what you can achieve with the LEAD program. And we'd like to invite you to continue exploring the program and to apply. So first up, like Professor Callander mentioned, we have a live panel discussion with our program ambassadors, Rumi and Tom, coming up in just a moment. So we hope that you all will stick around for that. And as you continue to explore LEAD, keep in mind that the next cohort is starting the program in September. You can apply now, and applications are due in just about 3 weeks on August 5th, which gives you plenty of time to prepare your materials. Now, if you have any questions about the program, I've seen some great ones coming in through the chat, whether that's about payment options for tuition, application process, or anything else. Don't hesitate to reach out to our team. You'll reach myself or one of the wonderful folks on this call with LEAD team in front of our names, and we'd be happy to help. And we do hope that we'll have a chance to learn a bit more about you and your goals for pursuing LEAD through the application process, and perhaps we'll have a chance to welcome you to LEAD and to the Stanford GSB community in September. Now, thank you again to all of you for participating in this session, Professor Callander and Rasheen for leading the discussion. And at this point, we'll transition to a live discussion with our ambassadors. Now, while we heard Rumi and Tom share about their experience and outcomes from the crisis management course just a moment ago, they've both completed the full 8-course program from LEAD, and they're here to share more about their overall experience and outcomes. So over the next 20 minutes or so, we'll hear from Rumi and Tom about why they chose to pursue LEAD, how the program impacted their personal and professional growth, how they made it work with their busy schedules, and we'll also hear their tips on how you can make the most out of your LEAD experience as well. And as we move through this discussion, if you have any questions that are a bit more administrative in nature, our staff team is happy to take those in the chat. So don't hesitate to continue sharing those there and we'll respond there. All right. Well, I know that many of you are on this call because you're actively thinking about the next steps in your own professional development journey. And our panelists were actually in your shoes not too long ago, considering enrolling in the program themselves. So I'd love to open up this discussion by asking our panelists to share why they chose to pursue Stanford LEAD. And Rumi, let's go ahead and start with you for this question.
Sure, Marina. So I had been working, before I joined LEAD, I'd been working in the healthcare industry for almost 16 to 17 years, and I knew the ins and outs of devices, clinical research, drugs, the science behind it all. But I realized that, I'm just a functional leader in the processes of the organizations that I've been working with. And my spouse actually is a fellow leader, and he was doing LEAD during the pandemic, and I saw the changes in him professionally as well as personally, because the course is such that you get to select your electives, and there are many electives like neuroscience, which helps in your personal development as well. So I saw the change in him and the beautiful community that he became a part of. And it made me think that after so many years of giving myself to this industry, I think I want to do something more. I want to not only climb the corporate ladder, but I want to kind of learn about the business side of things rather than just focusing on the science. And I felt that this would be the best course to do that, because of course Stanford, it's a great brand, right? It's one of the best education centers globally. So I was like, this is the perfect time. It's the perfect course because it is online. And of course, during the pandemic, we all saw our children kind of, working on their laptops, taking like classes. We were working always in front of screens. So I thought that this is going to be the perfect course of giving me the time to kind of focus on the work that I'm doing right now, but also grow myself personally as well as professionally. And it kind of, has given me all of that and more that I could think of.
Thank you so much, Rumi. And Tom, let's hear from you about your decision to pursue LEAD. And Tom, it looks like you might be muted.
There we go.
There we go.
How did I get to lead? It's a very funny story. I was with I was days within I was within days of making a decision. I had been studying a number of different online programs of graduate universities around the United States, and I was really close within. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it, and it was not for Stanford. And I got a contact somehow. I answered something, and I got connected to Diane Farrell in Dublin, who was advocating for the LEAD program, and it was like just exactly just like this, a program just like this today. And I signed up. I said, and someone emailed me and said, before you sign on the dotted line with anywhere else, you need to consider LEAD in Stanford. And I had never heard of LEAD in Stanford. I said, but I knew where Stanford was. I said, okay, sure, I'll do it. By the end of that phone call, I was sold. I mean, it was like I had done all this research on all these schools, and I thought it was amazing that this one course, this ambassador from LEAD, Diane, um, fabulous person, a business person in Dublin, Ireland, and just turned me around. It opened a different door for me, and I thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. So that's what got me to lead, and it's been a very rewarding experience as a result of going through this program.
Well, thank you both for sharing. We're also glad that you found your way to lead. And I want to turn now a bit into the LEAD program's focus on impact and outcomes. Now, for those of you familiar with the Graduate School of Business, you know that our motto is to change lives, change organizations, and change the world. And our programs are really designed to deliver impact. Now, over the last 10 plus years, excuse me, LEAD participants have reported incredibly strong results for both personal and professional growth. So in addition to experiencing growth in their careers, there are countless stories of participants who have successfully launched and scaled new projects, new initiatives, and new ventures using their learnings from LEAD. And we also have folks that have completely transformed not just their own mindset, but also those of their teams and their organizations. So Tom and Rumi, I'd love to take a moment to focus on your outcomes from the program. Can you each tell us a bit about how LEAD has impacted you and how it's also impacted your team and your organizations? And for this one, Tom, let's start with you.
Can you repeat the question just quickly?
Yeah, so the general question is, how has LEAD impacted you and your organization?
Well, again, as I said earlier, because of the fact that I deal with political risk and I work in politics, um, as a backdrop for what I do in the representation of weather technology companies before Congress, um, the perspective of what I learned in LEAD was extremely beneficial. I don't think I would have graduated LEAD had it not been for my teammates, my cohort. I was in the Pacesetter cohort, and the very team that I have, I am still to this day in communication with several of the folks that I worked with in our classwork. We've all completed LEAD, but yet we still talk to one another, and that's been an extremely beneficial thing. One of my colleagues, Stephen Perkins, very close to him. We grew we bonded in these course experience, and we continue to have the substantive discussions that are really important and relevant to what I do, what I work on, and we just enjoy that rapport going back and forth. That has continued to influence me from the experience of taking my coursework, the class, for example, doing really the insightful work that we learned in strategic leadership, crisis management, I could name every course going down the line, but it continues to influence my work on a regular basis, and I'm blessed for it.
Thank you, Tom. And Rumi, how about you?
So I think, like I mentioned before, I have not only seen a professional growth in me, I see some personal growth as well. But how it's changed my organization, definitely, there are small things that I brought to my team. For example, uh, feedback from my Leadership 360 degree course. We have implemented that, giving positive feedback, receiving feedback. Uh, I've kind of, implemented that here in the team, and I think we are seeing the results because we communicate better with each other. Roche being a global company, our teams are kind of, globally based. There are people in the East Coast, there are people in Europe, and we're working in different time zones. So I think communication is the key, right? And I did the communicating with impact course. I did the intentional leadership 360, and that kind of brought that communication aspect, which I passed on to my team. And I think that has really changed the way that we think, we communicate with each other. The other really important piece was the power to lead. The power to lead course was super impactful, I feel. I have spoken about the course to everyone in my organization that I've ever met. In fact, there are people who joined the Stanford Lead course in Roche because of, Power to Lead, and, Professor Pfeffer's course. So just how you show up, how you dress, you know, uh, telling that to people and seeing those changes, how you talk to leadership when you're talking about a crisis, right? How you're presenting the crisis. Are you presenting the crisis in the form of an opportunity, or are you presenting the crisis as in, oh my God, what do we do now? This is a crisis. So it's changed my focus, my internal thinking, critical analytical thinking, definitely. Oh my God, that course was super impactful too. So it gave me a framework of thinking through things differently. And if I do that, I bring that to my team. Although it's a smaller team, they talk to people that, we interact with because we are a global team. So I see that being like a chain reaction, right? And it kind of spreads from one person to another. So I see a lot of positive outcomes, definitely. And a lot more people have already joined LEAD. They want to join LEAD. They will be joining LEAD, I know. So I'm really looking forward to that. Very exciting.
Thank you, Rumi. And thank you both so much, Tom. It's great to hear about the positive influence from your peers and your teammates in the program and how that continues long after the program. And Rumi, it's great to hear about how you've been able to take both small and big things back to your organization and apply them there. Thank you both for sharing that. I want to now take a moment to focus on the program schedule and flexibility. So
Can I ask you, forgive
yes.
me,
Yeah.
I'm going to do a shameless thing here. Please accept my apology in advance.
Okay.
I am so blown away by so many people who have just on this phone call who have sent me a request on LinkedIn to connect. I am blown away. There are scores of people on here just asking me to connect with them on LinkedIn and to answer questions about LEAD. Folks, I'm going to be happy to connect with everybody. Just give me a couple of days, I'll get through it. But you guys are awesome. Just want to say that.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks for being so willing to connect with folks and continue the conversation. Really appreciate that. I'm sure everyone who reached out really appreciates that as well. All right, so I want to just transition to speak a little bit about the program schedule and flexibility. And as you all can see through Rumi and Tom, participants in this program lead full lives. They have lots of professional commitments, personal commitments as well. And this program is certainly designed with that in mind to offer enough flexibility so that you can weave it realistically with your daily schedule. Now, when we look at the full program and you can see a schedule on your screen, it runs over a period of 1 year, part-time, fully online, and participants are generally on average investing about 5 to 10 hours per week to complete the program requirements. Now, as you can see, the program is divided into 4 quarters that each run for about 8 to 9 weeks each, and then we have a bit of a break between each quarter as well. And most participants will take 2 courses at a time to complete that 8-course requirement in 1 year, Although we do have the option for you to scale that back to one course at a time, so your time commitment is closer to about 3 to 5 hours per week. And you can also take a temporary leave of absence just in case something comes up and you need that bit of a break. And you can extend your enrollment to up to 2 years. So there are lots of different ways to make it work with your schedule. And in my conversations with participants, it's very clear that each person has their own way of making it work. So since we have a bit of time with our ambassadors today, I'd love to take advantage of that time and ask them to share some insights from how they made it work with their schedule and their commitments. Rumi, would you like to share first and how you made this program work and balance
Absolutely.
work and life?
Absolutely, Marine. First of all, a huge shout out to our course facilitators and the lead team, because the way that they have made the program, I think it just makes it very easy to kind of, go through the whole thing. You're kind of thrown in the first half when you do the financial innovation and the critical analytical thinking together. That sets the pace for you, because those are two intense courses that you do together. But then, because you're doing them together, you now know how to kind of manage your time well and how to kind of move forward. And Marine, like you mentioned, you have a lot of flexibility to kind of do your work. The course facilitators are great because they make the groups and pairs for assignments as such that they are mostly in your time zone, so you don't have to kind of navigate the challenging time zone difference between other folks. But if you do, again, the community is so great that they will kind of just make it happen. I think the biggest thing that I took away was for time management, particularly, was again communication. If you know that you can anticipate that it's gonna be a difficult month at work, or you're going through some crisis or something else, if you communicate with your course facilitator, you tell them in advance that this is what I'm going through, and I'll not be able to kind of do my assignment on time. I think they are really, really awesome. They will reach out to you. They'll be like, how can we help you? And the other people in your team too, I've seen, they'll be like, oh, I can kind of, help you do this. I can meet and help you navigate through this difficult time, or help you with this assignment, or do this for you. So I found that really, really helpful. And then again, the course itself, the design is so great that it's not that all assignments are only focused on group or individual, right? It's a great mixed bag. So you can kind of focus like that, and then you always have the weekends. You can work over the weekends. I kind of particularly found it great. I worked on my assignments a lot on Saturdays and Sundays. In fact, there were some assignments that I worked on, like there's a negotiation course. Again, it's a great course. The assignment itself is like, you go to a supermarket, or you go to some place and you negotiate. So it's not that you're taking time out, really. You're doing your normal grocery and you can go and do that assignment. So the course is just built really fantastically, and you can just make it happen. You would not feel that you're going out of your way to complete it. But again, I would like to share one thing: with everything in life, the more you give, the more you get. And the course is the same. The more you kind of give to it, the more you study the material is great. You retain the material, it's going to be helpful. But the assignments are the thing that just keeps you on track, and your teams too. So that's how I navigated it. And I'm again happy to kind of connect to people off this stage, and help you, guide you through any situations, anything that you need. I'll hand it to Tom.
Thanks, Rumi. And Tom, maybe just being mindful of time, very quickly, is there anything you'd like to add in terms of how you balanced lead with your schedule?
Okay. I'm one of the lead was extremely generous to me, because during my time in enrollment at lead, and right after getting into lead, within 6 months, I think it was 6 months to a year after getting in lead, I then wound up with RSV. And I was quite ill for a while, and trying to struggle through the medical experience. And I just said, finally, nope, can't do it. And I had to take a leave. And then I came back for a while, did a couple more classes. Then I got a major promotion, had to run a new division. And then I had to say, sorry, got to take another leave of absence. So it was like, okay, I got over the health part. Then I had to take a leave of absence for the work part. And then I got a phone, then I got this email that's like, hi, we're dropping you from lead. You haven't shown up like in a year. And I go, oh, well, time to re-register. And I did. And they allowed me to finish. So lead is both generous, patient, and willing to work with everybody. And again, it's a great thing to do for yourself.
Thank you, Tom. We appreciate you sharing that. And absolutely, our goal is to make sure that folks that are motivated and willing to engage are able to be successful in the program. So we really appreciate you both sharing about your time investment in the program. And we certainly recognize that joining LEAD is a significant commitment of time, also of energy and resources. And for over 95% of our participants, we're delighted to see that they feel that the program was indeed worth their investment. Now, on the financial side, the program tuition is billed in 4 quarterly installments of $4,800 US, and there are options for you to spread that over multiple calendar years, which we hope will be helpful to you as you plan. Now, we understand that some of you might be utilizing tuition benefits from your employers, and we hope that these options to help spread your payments out over time will help you maximize your annual reimbursement caps, or just help you plan personally if you are funding that out of pocket. And so we're happy to partner with you in thinking through how to structure your enrollment and your payments in a way that makes sense for you, whether you're receiving support or self-funding. And now, as you weigh how this investment might benefit you, we've asked each of our panelists to candidly reflect on their own decision to join the program. And so I'll just ask for a quick in 20 to 30 seconds from each of you. Looking back, can you tell us your perspective? Was Stanford LEAD worth the investment for you, whether that's time, money, or opportunity costs? Share very quickly your perspective on that. And Tom, let's have you share first.
I mean, outstanding. I own my own company, so I paid for it through my company. But again, the the money was inconsequential. It was the experience of being part of LEAD is my driving decision for doing this.
Thank you, Tom. And Rumi?
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm continuing my journey even after getting my certification. I want to kind of, continue doing this. I'm taking more courses. I absolutely love the community and I don't want to leave LEAD. I would want to continue with it for many years, maybe do all the courses. So please, everybody, go for it. Don't think.
Well, thank you both so much. And for everyone on this call, if you do decide that LEAD is the right next step for you, we're currently accepting applications for the cohort that will begin this September. And applications are due August 5th. So now, as a reminder, there are no GRE or GMAT requirements for LEAD, and there's no fee to apply. So if you're thinking about it, I'd encourage you to go ahead and get started with your application. And as you go through the application process itself, you'll find that some of the requirements will naturally help you clarify your goals and thinking through your reasons for pursuing the program as well. Now, we'll look forward to hopefully learning more about your goals for many of you through your applications, and perhaps have a chance to welcome you to the Stanford LEAD and Graduate School of Business community in September. Now, as we wrap up here, I'd like to again say a big thank you to Rumi and Tom for making the time to join us today and for sharing such great insights, stories, and advice. And to everybody here, thank you so much for your engagement throughout the discussion. As you continue to explore LEAD, don't hesitate to reach out to our team. You can email leadadmissions@stanford.edu. We'd be happy to discuss the program further with you. So we'll look forward to staying in touch. But for now, please take good care and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much, everybody.